we didn't know we were going to start a new optics company. We thought we're just going to make a scope. And we didn't know it was going to be like an FX scope or what. But we started with the Nexus, which was like the beginning of everything, sort of. That's what the name Nexus means, like the point at which everything like connects to. Me and Ted each did our own. I did the MRAD reticles, he did the MA reticles. And then, you came on board. It's quite a cool backdrop for our first podcast.
No, this is awesome. Doesn't get better.
I kind of want to be facing that way though, because there's so much to see out here. But
you might see a monkey or something run up too.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to the Element Optics podcast. This is actually our first pilot episode. So
it is.
This is a little bit new for both of us. We might be rambling on a bit, but the whole idea here is just to have conversations and
have a good time.
Yeah, have a good time.
Can't do it in a better spot either.
Oh, 100%. We're in South Africa at the moment. One of us has to travel across the world in order for us to be face to face, and we're out here with the whole Element team with Henrik and Peter and Johan and us, and we've been testing some new products and
got some prototypes we've been testing for future stuff. So it's been awesome. Yeah,
just catching up and talking about future products and testing existing products and just having a good time. And it just made me think, with our team sort of growing quite close and having fun together, looking back at how things started.
We've come a long ways in 4 years now. 4 years in February or a couple months ago. So.
Yeah, time flies. It's
really
bizarre,
does.
Actually. Topic for today is the Element Optics origin story. There's no better place to start the podcast than kind of, I guess, explaining and talking about what Element Optics is about. Mm-hmm. Because it didn't just happen. We weren't just like, let's start a company and let's make some money.
Yeah.
It was never about that. There's quite a story of how Element formed out of almost like a necessity of something we saw a need in the market for, and something we wanted to do, and something we all had a passion for.
Yeah, most definitely.
So you joined a little bit after I was there. So I think what I'll do is I'll relay the way I remember things, leading into starting Element.
Okay.
And then I'm curious to hear about your memories of the first time you heard about Element and how you got involved. And then we can talk about, what happened once you came on board and everything.
Yeah, of course. Let's go for it.
I think the most important thing to bring up here is we've all had quite a journey when it comes to scopes. Mm-hmm. If I look at when we started Element, which was early 2020, we kind of launched publicly. But the years leading up to that were a year of huge growth, not only for us as shooters, learning about what scopes are about, but also the whole optics industry. If you think of just a few years prior to that, 5 years before that, there were very few first focal plane scopes. There were very few affordable scopes with let's say, a mil reticle and mil turrets, matching.
A lot of stuff was MOA turrets, mil reticles.
And a lot of people weren't dialing. Obviously, there were some scopes in the market that were great, but a lot of them were either just way out of people's budget, or they were being done, but not being done that well. Mm-hmm. And that's something we kind of, as we grew as shooters and we were deeply involved in the industry, we saw a need for, that's got to change. We need to do something about that. But I'll rewind the clock back to 2013, 2014, when I just started to get into shooting. And my idea for what a good scope was, I didn't understand fully how the mechanical components inside worked and how important it was for it to hold zero track. You kind of just assume that stuff works, right? You don't, as a new shooter, you don't look at a scope and think, oh, you know what, that might not track. You kind of, in your naive way of looking at things, you're like, okay, well, you just assume it works.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
And you look at features, you think, 6-24, that's a good magnification range, or it's I want illumination, or I want, but you don't think of for example, my first scope, I bought a 6-24 illuminated scope, but it was like a 1-inch tube.
Okay.
And it was a thick mil-dot reticle and capped MOA turrets. And it wasn't bad. Like, what I paid for it was not bad value for money. But if I look back, for that same money, I could have bought something with a more toned down feature set, maybe no illumination, maybe a low magnification range. But I could have had a more travel, or I could have had better turrets or something. But you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was your first scope?
I mean, I've had a lot of scopes, but my first real scope was like a 4-12 Bushnell back when I was probably 12, 13 years old. That I had on an air rifle, actually, a little spring gun. And just had standard duplex reticle and capped. I had a front AO.
Yeah.
I don't remember how low it went, but I love that scope. And, looking back, it did the job and did all my shooting needs. So that was probably my first, real scope that I had on any type of a gun or rifle.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. And then I suppose for me, my big mental shift started. I'll mention the company's name because I actually think they did a really good job. But SWFA Outdoors, they made a series of fixed magnification scopes called the Super Snipers. Corny name, but actually really good scopes. They had I bought a fixed 16x42. It had exposed mil turrets, really good clicks, fixed magnification, fine mil-dot reticle.
Okay.
And I actually brought that to Extreme Bench Rest 2016, which was the first time I met you.
Okay, so that was the scope you were using.
I shot 100-yard bench rest with a fixed 16 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, didn't go
That's
so
tough.
well, but it doesn't really matter. And then I also got a 5-20 first focal plane, 5-20x50, which if you look back, that's the Nexus ended up being that. So I think subliminally there was probably some influence from that when we were doing the Nexus. But I realized from buying those scopes that my whole preconception of what's important had changed. Like when I started dialing, because my turrets and reticle were in the same units, when I started realizing the value of putting money into performance and instead of just features, that's when I realized it kind of cut so many things away of what I don't want in a scope, and I was able to
so you're able to take your budget and find out what works in that budget.
Exactly.
And get those features that you wanted.
Yeah.
So.
And the funny story is, that was 2016. That is when I first met you, and you were working in Arizona where we had Extreme Bench Rest, and you were working for an optics company that you'd kind of helped to get involved with the startup.
And start, like you said, a startup.
And I don't know exactly how you guys got hold of me, but you kind of invited me to sit down and look at reticles designs with you.
Yeah, I was getting a lot of feedback from you, which you liked and didn't like, and some different ideas for reticle designs.
Yeah, and we ended up doing for the American market, we did an MOA reticle, and we did matching MOA turrets.
Yep.
And that was kind of our start. That was the start of our journey as working together. And I distinctly remember it being very easy to work with you. And I remember a year later, EBR 2017, we both used
that scope,
that exact scope we worked on, and you took first place and I took second place.
Yeah,
so that was really rewarding. Okay, we'd done something and we'd used it and it worked.
And it worked.
It was cool.
That was. And then, it's funny how life works, Just simple questions asking you about a reticle, and here we are 8 years later and, running Element Optics and loving it.
It is very weird. After that, you carried on your work with that company. Me being someone, I make YouTube videos. That's kind of what I've been doing, but so I had the option of working with different optics brands and trying out new stuff and all of that. And what I found was I had all these epiphanies and ideas of what I could make better in the scopes I was seeing. But every optics company that I sort of worked with, whether it's just giving feedback on something that was loaned to me or sponsored to me, or whether it was something more direct, like some optics companies were like, hey, we want to partner with you on doing something, I would have ideas, and some of them might have been listened to, but there were some very critical things like tracking performance or the way that certain things were put together that wasn't listened to, and kind of frustrated me because all these projects that I was supposed to put my name on never like met the standards that I would have done if I'd done it myself.
Yeah. It's like 80% right, but there's just a little bit more.
And that little 20%, that matters.
It does.
Like, I mean, let's say if a reticle's not calibrated properly, or if it's installed slightly skewed to the turrets, there may be a 3% error. But that 3%, when you're dialing a long way up, or you're shooting long range like we were doing earlier today,
a lot of the style of shooting
that's the difference between a hit and a miss.
Of course.
And the reality is, nowadays, you can make an affordable scope like the Helix perform perfectly.
Yeah. It'll track up and down.
Yeah, we've done it.
Yeah, consistently.
Yeah. So my story is that myself and Ted Beer, who was another sort of founding member of Element Optics, him and I, we kind of did our rounds at different optics companies. Like, we wanted to make a scope, and we went to, I won't mention all their names, but all these different companies, and like, hey, and they were on board, but they were saying, okay, we'll do a reticle with you guys, but we're not going to change, this. We think that a 3% tracking error is good enough. And I remember having a meeting that we thought was quite promising at, I think must have been 2018 IWA. And Ted and I had a meeting, and we came back from that meeting just feeling like, oh man, like this isn't working out. And we came to the FX airgun stand, and Frederick, who's a good friend of ours, who owns FX airguns, and Johan is here as well. Johan is Frederick's son. Frederick kind of said to us like, hey, what's up? And we told him, we want to make a good scope, but we're not getting like the feedback or the cooperation that we want. And I saw Frederick thinking a bit, and he said, hey, why don't we start something ourselves? I think at that time, FX was like, they still are, but like they're really flying high, selling a lot of guns and all that. But they know as well as anyone that you can't just rest on your laurels. And if something had to happen to FX as a company, or if there was some law that, let's say they made air guns illegal in the US, or you need, whatever. You need like to diversify, put your eggs in different baskets. So Frederick was looking for stuff to invest in, and he saw that, we had a passion for what we want to do, and so we'd do a good job if he let us run with it. And he kind of said to us, hey, if me and Ted can find the right partners to build a good scope, and we put in the right design criteria and quality control stuff, he'd fund everything. He wouldn't get involved with like telling us what to do. He said, hey, you guys know scopes. I don't know scopes as well. I trust you. Run with it, and we'll make sure this happens. And that kind of set us off. And that's how the Nexus development started. At the beginning, we weren't sure whether we wanted to. We didn't know we were going to start a new optics company. We thought we're just going to make a scope. And we didn't know it was going to be like an FX scope or what. But we started with the Nexus, which was like the beginning of everything, sort of. That's what the name Nexus means, like the point at which everything like connects to. And that, I think the name was actually Ted's idea.
It was, yeah.
Me and Ted each did our own. I did the MRAD reticles, he did the MOA reticles. And then you came on board. But I don't remember how that happened or... So when was the first time you heard of Element Optics?
You mentioned IWA 2018, which I was there as well, working for another company at the time. And I don't know if it was at IWA or right after IWA, but I got rumor that you guys were, looking to do something and start some type of optics for yourself or on your own. And then, was it June 2018, RMAC, I believe. We were all there hanging out, Ted, yourself, and I believe it was Ted. I was talking with him, and he started telling me about some of the stuff they were doing, and that really got me interested, because already working with some optics and, seeing it do real well, but kind of just being held back and not. I had a vision of what it could be, and that vision wasn't really going the direction I thought it could. It kind of started getting me very interested in what you guys were doing and what Frederick had allowed. And it's like you said, it's like, hey, I don't really want to be involved, but I want to support because you guys are passionate about what you're doing. He knows that you're going to do a good job, and kind of just helped move things along. And I think it was in 2019, maybe 6, 7, 8 months after RMAC, is when I sat down and talked with Frederick, yourself, and made the decision to move over and go 100% with Element Optics.
Yeah.
And that's and at that time you guys had already started the Nexus. Hadn't seen the Nexus yet, but it was, I think, about February 2019 when all that kind of March 2019 when all that kind of came about. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And what was it? August, September 2019 when we went and visited some factories.
Yeah.
That was the first time we saw the Nexus.
Yeah, it was.
So there a lot happened in between those 6 months, but that's really when things really just took off. And that trip that we did, we got a lot done and added 2 more SKUs to the line that we were going to launch with 4 or 5 months after that. And we had the Titan, the Helix, which we came up with the names on that trip. It had manuals pretty much formatted and rough draft. So yeah, that was awesome. That was probably one of the best trips I've gone on.
Yeah.
So, and the start of a very good thing.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, when you came on board, we'd kind of already started the Nexus development, but that was the only scope we had.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the Nexus development in a separate podcast, because that was, I mean, that's kind of like the bulk of the work on like external and
you're gonna get the book out.
Oh the book.
Oh yeah, you gotta show everyone the book. That's a really cool story.
Yeah. So the bulk of the initial development happened there between me and Ted, but then the Nexus was always meant to be like, let's hold nothing back, let's make like a really. We didn't even know what it was going to cost to make. We didn't know anything. We just
kind of went at it.
And we didn't have experience making stuff in the more affordable price tiers, and you did. And you had not only the experience of knowing like what the market wanted and like the feature set that people were looking for and all of that, and where everything would compete, because you'd been working not only on the development of those scopes but also in retail, talking to people, knowing all this stuff. We hadn't done that. We knew nothing about like what the market needed. We just knew what we wanted to do.
Yeah, it goes back to like what you're saying. You knew what you wanted. You didn't know what it was going to cost, but to get all those features, a lot of times you're going to have to spend that higher price range.
Yeah.
But there are ways to do it affordable, and that's what we did.
So I think when we went on our trip in September, that was the first time I'd really spent a lot of time with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
like before that we knew each other, but
we knew we'd hang out with groups because all the different competitions we saw.
Yeah, but this is like
just you and me.
We got to know each other. We got to go to different manufacturing facilities, see all the fine details of what could and could not be done. And what was so cool about that trip when we decided to do the Helix and the Titan was, I remember you and I picking up so many things straight away that other brands were doing that we knew we could do better and differently for the same price. And I think the goal of the Helix and Titan became like, let's make, let's keep the feature set kind of similar to the Nexus, but let's make two more price tiers that are lower, because everyone can afford different things, right?
Yeah,
Some
of
people,
course.
If all you can afford is a Helix, let's make sure that whoever saves up and spends their hard-earned money on a Helix can get the best optic they can get in that
best
price
bang for
tier.
the buck.
And with our experience in knowing that it's not all about the feature set and how like clear the glass is, but there's so much more going on, all the internal components, and our experience like seeing how everything is put together and made, we were able to instantly make changes that were like improved everything. For example, the tracking.
Yeah, the turrets.
We looked at other optics on the market that were popular in the same price tier as the Helix, and we did tracking tests, and we saw most of them had like
3 to 5% error.
3 to 5% tracking error, and we were able to get the Helix down to like under 1%.
Yeah.
Which at that time, like, there wasn't really anything else in the market doing that.
Yeah, and that $400 price range, which the Helix retails for, there's not. I mean, there might be a few scopes out there. I've yet to see one that tracks like the Helix does.
Yeah.
But the Helix tracks amazing.
Yeah, I'd say overall the whole market has improved on that side of things over the last since we started the
Yeah.
Helix, but
Yes. But
we've
at that
really,
time,
at the time, we really had a really something good going, and still do. I mean, we've just made that scope better and better, refining little things along the way.
of course.
And then the Titan, we wanted to have all the same mechanical reliability that the Helix had, but just better optical performance for the guys who really needed that better optical performance without going to like tier 1 glass.
Yep.
And more
More
travel for guys who wanted to compete.
Yeah.
And that's how those turned out. But
yeah, the Helix and the Titan, you know, but I think especially the Titan, when you and I saw that scope and what we were able to do with it and still keep it in that price, that $800 price range, it really got us excited.
Yeah.
Because at the time, you know, 5 years ago when we were there, there was nothing on the market like it.
No.
Maybe one or two other scopes out there.
Yeah.
And I felt like our Titan had more features than what those scopes offered.
Yeah.
So I was very excited when we left to come back home, knowing that we are gonna had that to release.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, like, I suppose many people think we just like a Helix and Titan, just, you know, buy like a generic model from a company that makes scopes for like 50 other manufacturers and just put our name on it. It doesn't work like that.
No.
The factory that we work with, they are basically only doing Element right now, I think.
Yeah.
They maybe do like a few orders for one other brand, but like they basically almost exclusively doing Element.
Everything.
And what that means is, if we have an idea for doing things differently, which we have over the years, and we've like made quite a few changes, we don't have to worry about that information being shared with anyone else.
Yeah, and getting copied, which
getting
happens
copied.
a lot.
Yeah. And we've kind of like got a very, very, very unique relationship that most optics companies don't have. And especially starting off small and growing with the factories.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not like a massive corporation who's just got like 50 different factories. They're just ordering the same product from all of them and, you know, putting it in the same box.
Yeah.
Which some people do. We've got a pretty special like personal connection and pretty special like control over what we do. And I think that's probably what sets us apart, especially in those price tiers.
Yeah.
It's easy to fix quality control issues and improve stuff when you're just throwing money at a product that's a tier 1 product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if a part doesn't perform correctly, you just chuck it away and make a new one. But when you're trying to make stuff on a budget, it's harder to do that.
Yeah.
And we've managed to make it work.
Oh yeah, and then, you know, over the years, just taking so many scopes apart, which you've done a lot, you find weak spots on scopes across the board. And us working with those manufacturer and relaying that information to them and having them make those changes and those improvements and making that scope just so much more robust has been huge.
Yeah. And I think something has to be said. You know, we've spoken about our journeys, but the team that we've built now, you know, after you came on board, we needed more. As Element grew, we needed more employees in Europe. So Henrik came on board full time, and then later, more recently, Petter.
Yep.
And Johann's obviously been involved from the start.
From the start.
And just the different, like, the team aspect and the different inputs we have. Like, my experience, I've got a lot of hunting experience. You've got a lot of, you know, like, shooting, like talking to customers. You're definitely more like in tune with what the end user needs and wants, and
the needs and wants,
and the numbers behind like what our scopes are actually competing against. I'm a bit more like unsure of. I don't know that stuff as much. And then you've got Henrik and Petter, who are both military men.
Yeah.
Like spent time in the military, and then we're basically bodyguards for like diplomats in very dodgy countries. And like the what they learned from those experiences, not only like work ethic wise, discipline, but also like what's required to make something very reliable, and having their input on like making sure stuff doesn't break and all of that. All these different like when we've been developing products, we've been able to look at stuff from so many different angles and like have a very unique team environment with product development. And I think that's the reason why some of the especially some of our more recent stuff like Helix HD and HDLR, the way that
Yeah.
we developed those two scopes and the way that they've been so successful is down to just having more angles to look at the
more good
same thing.
feedback.
It's not just you and me anymore. It's like a whole team.
I remember that very clearly on the HD and
Yeah.
HDLR. Me and Henrik were having some disagreements on what the market wanted, and I don't know why I didn't think about this from the get-go, but it was like, well, why don't we just do both? We can have cap and capped exposed.
Yeah.
And both of those scopes have been about a 50-50 as far as sales.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
understanding different markets and different locations, because obviously the U.S. is completely different, even from the West Coast to the East Coast to Europe. Everybody needs a little bit different style as far as features. Same exact scope, but those little features can be much more popular over here versus over there.
I think our disagreement was, what does hunting mean? Like, what is hunting?
Yeah,
because you wanted to make a hunting scope, but for you and me with a bit more open.
Yeah,
areas,
you can see as far as the sun goes down.
Yeah. So for us, hunting was okay. You need like some sort of reticle markings, and you need an exposed turret.
You need to be able to dial.
But for the guys in Europe, it's like no. Simple is better. And when I was hunting in Sweden a few months ago, I got that. I was like, I get it now. I understand why you did that, and I understand why those scopes are selling so well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why like being able to listen to each other, and it's really important.
It is. Yeah, just getting out there, like I said, and experience that, you really get a better understanding.
Yeah.
And that's what these trips help us do as well, because, these guys in Sweden, they don't have the opportunity to have open shooting like this. So getting them out here and us going to Sweden or different parts of the world like we're trying to do just to hunt, you really get a good idea on what each market values in an optic.
Yeah. And I think we never want to get to the point where we're so corporate and disconnected from the reality of what our products are being used for, that we become, kind of like cut off from the way people actually use our stuff. Like, as an example, today we went out, we put steel up out to basically almost a kilometer, and we went out in like 15 to 20 mile per hour winds, and we just shot, and we tested rangefinders, we tested our ballistic app, we tested the scopes on the rifles, and how well they cut through mirage. We tested some new potential prototype products, and like that. Now we're able to come back and sit around a fire tonight and talk about what worked and what didn't work and what we want to do, and that's pretty special.
What we liked, because what I like might be different than what you like, and we go deeper into that and discuss that. So these trips are great for everything as far as the relationship between all of us, like you mentioned, and just a good kind of reset just to figure out the future of Element and the direction we want to go and how we do that. So
I know something we haven't spoken about yet, and that's the Element Optics name.
Okay.
I don't vividly remember how it came about, but I think it was Ted. We were just.
It sounds like Ted's very good with the names.
Yeah, we had a WhatsApp group, and the WhatsApp group was just called like New Scopes or something like that, and with all the people involved in what we wanted to do, and we were open to name suggestions. And Ted, who is a biologist, he's always thinking of like, I don't know, out the box names. Like Nexus was his thing. Helix was also his idea.
I think Helix.
Yeah. Maybe even Titan too.
I'll give him credit.
Anyway, but Element Optics, I think he suggested it, but I remember being straight up like, I like that because it's it has so many different meanings. Like the element is like you could be like in your element when you're hunting. Mm-hmm. Like this is where you belong. You're in your element. It can also be the element is the foundational thing that everything else is made of, built on. But also the play on words in that, like a lens element is like a part of a lens, and if you put a bunch of lens elements together, you get like lens sub-assemblies or lens groups, and then you get a whole optical system. And so we kind of like that from the start, and it just stuck. And
it's an excellent.
It is a good name.
Yeah, definitely grateful for Ted on that one.
Yeah.
That was good. Good pick.
Yeah. Ted, if you're watching, we owe you, brother.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. was nice to reminisce a bit.
No, it is.
I
It's
think
been
it's easy to like get caught up with what we're doing and forget where we came from. And I remember launching Element. We were supposed to be at Iwa,
That's right.
and then COVID happened. And actually, in hindsight, maybe it was the best thing that ever happened to us. But I remember being unsure of like, hey, how's this thing gonna go? Launched Element, and it's just everything's just been.
Yeah, I was getting ready to get on
awesome
an
since
airplane. I think the day before they canceled.
Yeah.
But I guess, the advantage that worked out well for us is we were so used to working, remote.
Yeah.
And before 2020, there wasn't, people worked remote, but not like they did during COVID or after COVID.
Yeah.
So we were just, when everything shut down, it was like normal for us because you're in South Africa, I'm in Arizona, they're in Sweden, and a lot of other guys we were working with are spread out across the states and other countries. So it was a little nerve-wracking with the 2020 situation, but I think it was a blessing in disguise, for Ellen Optics for sure.
It was.
For sure.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. But if you enjoyed listening to this or watching it if you're on YouTube, please consider following us and subscribing.
Of course.
We're going to keep these podcasts going. I know this one is very much about us, but I think the goal is to just talk about general shooting / hunting / outdoor stuff. Like,
yeah, it's going to be amazing. I'm excited to listen personally.
we're not here to like toot our own horn. We're here to have fun and like talk about stuff. So
if you're not having fun, then what's the point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, stay tuned for the next one, and we'll see you then.
Awesome.